In 2012, the largest and most expensive scientific instrument ever constructed confirmed the existence of something that should not have surprised anyone, but that changed everything. The instrument was the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, a 27-kilometer ring of superconducting magnets buried 100 meters beneath the Franco-Swiss border, accelerating protons to 99.9999991% of the speed of light and smashing them together at energies that had not existed in the universe since the first trillionth of a second after the Big Bang. And the something was the Higgs boson, a particle that had been predicted in 1964 by Peter Higgs and 5 other physicists that had eluded detection for nearly half a century, and that, when it was finally found, confirmed the most disturbing truth that particle physics has ever established about the nature of reality. The truth is this: the physical world that you see, touch, and inhabit is not the fundamental level of reality. It is a surface, a thin, visible, tangible membrane stretched over a deeper, invisible, intangible layer that the surface conceals. The particles that constitute your body, the forces that hold your atoms together, the light that enters your eyes, and the gravity that keeps your feet on the ground are not fundamental. They are consequences of a deeper reality that operates beneath the surface of the physical world, that cannot be directly observed, and that constitutes the true foundation of everything that exists. The disturbing truth has a name. Physicists call it the hierarchy of reality, the recognition that the physical world is organized in layers, with each layer concealing a deeper layer beneath it, and with the deepest layers being the most fundamental and the most completely hidden from ordinary perception. The atoms that the 19th century thought were fundamental turned out to be composed of electrons and nuclei. The nuclei turned out to be composed of protons and neutrons. The protons and neutrons turned out to be composed of quarks and gluons. And the quarks and gluons turned out to be excitations of quantum fields that pervade every point of space and that constitute a hidden substrate beneath the visible particles. Each layer, when discovered, revealed that the previous layer was not fundamental. Each layer was a surface, a visible, tangible expression of a deeper, hidden, more fundamental reality. And each discovery pushed the boundary between the known and the unknown deeper into the structure of reality, revealing more hidden layers beneath the visible surface. The Higgs boson is the messenger from this hidden layer. Its discovery confirmed that the mass of every particle in the universe, the property that gives matter, its substance, its inertia, its resistance to acceleration, its weight is not intrinsic to the particles themselves. Mass is given to the particles by their interaction with the Higgs field, an invisible, space-filling quantum field that pervades every cubic centimeter of the universe, that cannot be seen or felt or detected by any ordinary instrument, and that constitutes, in the most literal sense, a hidden layer beneath the visible reality. The Higgs field is not the only hidden layer. It is not even the most significant hidden layer. It is merely the most recently confirmed hidden layer, the most recent addition to a growing catalogue of invisible realities that the physics of the past century has revealed beneath the surface of the physical world. And the catalogue, when assembled, describes a picture of reality that is radically different from the picture that common sense provides. A picture in which the visible world is a thin surface floating on an ocean of invisible structure, and in which the true nature of reality is hidden by its very nature from the senses that evolved to perceive the surface. Let us assemble the catalogue. The first hidden layer is the quantum vacuum. The vacuum, the empty space between the atoms in your body, between the stars in the galaxy, between the galaxies in the cosmic web, is not empty. It is the most complex, the most energetic, and the most informationally rich structure in the known universe. The quantum vacuum is filled with quantum fields, the electron field, the quark field, the gluon field, the photon field, the Higgs field, and a dozen others, all vibrating at their 0-point energy, all fluctuating with the irreducible minimum of quantum activity that the Heisenberg uncertainty principle requires. The vacuum fluctuations are not abstract mathematical constructs. They are physically real. They produce measurable effects. The Casimir effect, the attractive force between two closely spaced conducting plates, is caused by the vacuum fluctuations. The plates restrict the allowed vibration modes of the vacuum between them, reducing the vacuum energy between the plates relative to the vacuum energy outside them, and the resulting pressure differential pushes the plates together. The Casimir effect has been measured to a precision of 1%, confirming that the vacuum fluctuations are real, and that the empty space between the plates is not empty but seething with quantum activity. The Lamb shift, the tiny difference between two energy levels of the hydrogen atom that the Dirac equation predicts should be identical, is caused by the vacuum fluctuations. The electron in the hydrogen atom interacts with the virtual photons and virtual electron-positron pairs that the vacuum continuously produces, and the interaction shifts the electron's energy by a tiny but measurable amount. The Lamb shift was measured by Willis Lamb in 1947, earning him the Nobel Prize, and it confirmed that the quantum vacuum's hidden activity has observable consequences for the structure of the atom. The vacuum energy is enormous. The theoretical calculation of the vacuum's energy density, the total energy of all the 0-point vibrations in a given volume of space, yields approximately 10 to the 113 joules per cubic meter. This is a staggering number, larger than the total energy of all the matter in the observable universe, concentrated in a single cubic meter of space. The vacuum is not empty. It is an ocean of energy, a hidden layer of vibrational activity that underlies the visible matter, and that contains, in its fluctuations, more energy than the entire physical universe that floats on its surface. The discrepancy between the theoretical vacuum energy and the observed vacuum energy, the cosmological constant problem that we explored in our investigation of vibration, is 120 orders of magnitude. Something is cancelling almost all of the vacuum's energy, leaving only the tiny residual that drives the accelerating expansion of the universe. The cancellation mechanism is unknown. It is one of the deepest unsolved problems in physics, and it tells us that the hidden layer of the vacuum is not merely energetic. It is precisely tuned, adjusted, with a precision of 120 decimal places to the specific value that permits the visible universe to exist. The vacuum is also populated by virtual particles, particle-antiparticle pairs, that appear spontaneously from the vacuum energy, exist for an unimaginably brief period on the order of 10 to the minus 21 seconds for electron-positron pairs, and annihilate back into the vacuum. The virtual particles are not hypothetical. They are the mechanism by which the vacuum fluctuations produce the Casimir effect and the Lamb shift. They are detected indirectly in every high-precision measurement of quantum electrodynamics, and they constitute, in their ceaseless production and annihilation, a hidden ecology of particle creation and destruction that occurs at every point of space, at every moment of time, entirely beneath the threshold of ordinary perception. The physicist John Wheeler described the vacuum at the Planck scale, the scale of 10 to the minus 35 meters, the smallest scale at which space-time has a well-defined geometry, as a quantum foam, a seething, roiling, topologically fluctuating froth in which the geometry of space-time itself is in constant flux, forming and dissolving microscopic wormholes, microscopic black holes, and microscopic topological structures that exist for Planck times 10 to the minus 43 seconds before dissolving back into the foam. The quantum foam is the deepest hidden layer of the vacuum, the level at which space-time itself loses its smooth, continuous character and reveals its hidden, discrete, fluctuating nature. The second hidden layer is the mass that isn't there. Your body has mass. Every atom in your body has mass. And the atom's mass comes from the protons and neutrons in their nuclei. But where does the proton's mass come from? The proton is made of 3 quarks, 2 up quarks and 1 down quark, bound together by the gluons of the strong force. The mass of the 3 quarks, measured individually, is approximately 9.4 megaelectron volts. The mass of the proton is approximately 938 megaelectron volts. The quarks account for approximately 1% of the proton's mass. 99% of the proton's mass is not the mass of the quarks. It is the mass of the gluon field, the energy of the strong force's vibrations, converted to mass through Einstein's E equals mc squared. This means that 99% of the mass of your body is not the mass of matter. It is the mass of vibration, the mass of the gluon field oscillating between the quarks, the energy of the strong force's hidden activity converted into the mass that gives your body its weight, its substance, and its physical presence. You are not made of stuff. You are made of vibration. The 1% of your mass that comes from the quarks is the visible surface. The 99% that comes from the gluon field is the hidden layer, the invisible vibrational activity that constitutes the vast majority of the physical reality that you call your body. CERN's experiments have confirmed this with extraordinary precision. The lattice QCD calculations, the supercomputer simulations that solve the equations of quantum chromodynamics on a discrete spacetime grid, reproduce the proton's mass from the gluon field's vibrational energy with an accuracy of better than 2%. The mass of the proton is a prediction of the hidden layer's vibrational activity. The surface, the visible matter, the quarks, the stuff accounts for 1%. The hidden layer accounts for 99%, and the hidden layer is invisible, intangible, and inaccessible to any instrument except the most powerful particle colliders ever built. The third hidden layer is dark matter. The visible matter, the atoms, the molecules, the stars, the planets, the galaxies, constitutes approximately 5% of the total mass energy of the observable universe. Another 27% is dark matter, a form of matter that does not emit light, does not absorb light, does not interact with the electromagnetic force, and cannot be detected by any telescope, any spectrometer, or any detector that operates on the electromagnetic spectrum. Dark matter is invisible. It is hidden. It constitutes more than 5 times the mass of all the visible matter in the universe, and its existence is confirmed by multiple independent lines of evidence: the rotation curves of galaxies, the gravitational lensing of distant light sources, the dynamics of galaxy clusters, and the anisotropies of the cosmic microwave background. The remaining 68% of the universe's mass energy is dark energy, the most mysterious and the most dominant component of the cosmos. Dark energy is the energy that drives the accelerating expansion of the universe that was discovered in 1998 through the observation of distant supernovae, and that has not been identified with any known particle, field, or physical mechanism. Dark energy is the deepest hidden layer, the most fundamental, the most pervasive, and the most poorly understood component of physical reality. The identity of dark energy is completely unknown. The simplest hypothesis is that dark energy is the cosmological constant, the vacuum energy that Einstein introduced into his field equations in 1917, and that the quantum field theory calculates as the zero-point energy of the quantum vacuum. But the cosmological constant problem, the 1-to-0 order of magnitude discrepancy between the theoretical and the observed values, makes this identification deeply problematic. Alternative hypotheses include quintessence, a dynamic, time-varying form of energy associated with a new quantum field. Modified gravity, a modification of Einstein's equations that mimics the effects of dark energy without requiring a new energy source. And the multiverse, the hypothesis that the dark energy's value is not determined by fundamental physics, but is selected by the anthropic principle from a vast landscape of possible values. None of these hypotheses has been confirmed. Dark energy remains the most fundamental and the most mysterious hidden layer in the catalogue, a layer that constitutes more than 2/3 of the total energy of the universe and that physics has not yet identified with any known physical mechanism. When you assemble the catalogue, the picture is astonishing. The visible universe, everything you can see, touch, measure, and detect with the instruments of science, constitutes 5% of reality. The remaining 95% is hidden, 27% dark matter, 68% dark energy, and the vast ocean of vacuum energy that seethes beneath the surface of the visible world. The surface is thin, the hidden layers are deep, and the physics of the past century has been, in essence, the progressive discovery of the hidden layers that the surface conceals. The fourth hidden layer is the quantum field itself. We established in our investigation of vibration that the fundamental reality of the physical world is not particles, but fields, that particles are excitations of quantum fields, that the diversity of matter is the diversity of vibration, and that the solid, substantial, permanent-seeming physical world is a pattern of vibrations in quantum fields. But the fields themselves are hidden. You cannot see the electron field. You cannot touch the quark field. You cannot detect the Higgs field with any of your senses. What you see and touch and detect are the excitations, the particles, the waves, the specific patterns of vibration that the fields support. The fields are the hidden layer, the particles are the surface, and the surface is all that the senses can perceive. The physicist David Bohm described this relationship with his concept of the implicate order, the enfolded, hidden, deeper reality from which the visible, explicate order unfolds. The implicate order is the field, the explicate order is the excitation. The visible world, the particles, the atoms, the molecules, the objects, the events, is the unfolded expression of the enfolded field. And the enfolded field is always deeper, always richer, and always more informationally dense than the unfolded surface that it produces. Bohm's language is not merely philosophical, it is physically precise. The quantum field contains, in its mathematical structure, every possible excitation, every possible particle, every possible state, every possible configuration that the field can support. The actual excitations, the particles that actually exist, the events that actually occur, are a tiny subset of the field's total potential. The field is the hidden totality. The particles are the revealed selection. And the process by which the selection is made, the process by which the hidden potential becomes the visible actual, is the measurement, the observation, the act of conscious perception that we explored in our investigation of the first observer. The physicist John Wheeler, whose participatory universe we have encountered throughout this series, described the relationship between the hidden and the visible with his famous aphorism, "It from bit." The visible reality, the it, the physical world of particles and forces and structures, arises from the hidden reality, the bit, the informational content of the quantum fields, the binary answers to yes or no questions that the observations extract from the quantum potential. The hidden layer is informational, the visible surface is physical. And the process that converts the hidden information into the visible physics is the measurement, the observation, the act of conscious perception that selects a specific outcome from the quantum superposition of possible outcomes. Wheeler's it from bit implies that the deepest hidden layer is not physical at all. It is informational, a layer of pure information, pure potential, pure possibility that exists beneath the physical world and that the physical world expresses. The quantum fields are the medium that encodes the information. The particles are the messages that the medium carries. And the hidden layer, the informational substrate that the fields encode and that the observations reveal, is the true foundation of reality, more fundamental than matter, more fundamental than energy, and more fundamental than space-time itself. The fifth hidden layer is the one that CERN is now probing. The standard model of particle physics, the theory that describes the electromagnetic force, the weak nuclear force, and the strong nuclear force, and that identifies 17 fundamental particles, and their interactions is not the final theory. It is incomplete. It does not include gravity. It does not explain dark matter. It does not account for dark energy. It does not explain why the universe contains matter rather than antimatter. It does not explain why the fundamental constants have the specific values they have. And it does not explain why the Higgs boson's mass is so much lighter than the quantum corrections predict the hierarchy problem, one of the deepest unsolved problems in physics. CERN's current and future experiments are designed to probe beyond the standard model to discover the particles, the forces, and the principles that constitute the next hidden layer beneath the currently known physics. The muon G2 experiment at Fermilab has detected anomalies in the magnetic moment of the muon deviations from the standard model's prediction that suggest the existence of unknown particles or unknown forces that are influencing the muon's behavior from the hidden layer. The LHCb experiment at CERN has detected anomalies in the decays of B mesons deviations that suggest violations of lepton universality, a fundamental principle of the standard model that may be broken by physics from the hidden layer. And the search for supersymmetric particles, for extra dimensions, and for dark matter candidates continues at the energy frontier, probing deeper and deeper into the hidden structure of reality. The theoretical physicist Nima Arkani Hamed at the Institute for Advanced Study has described the current era of particle physics as the exploration of the hidden sector, the systematic search for the particles, forces, and principles that exist beyond the standard model and that constitute the next layer of the hidden structure. Arkani Hamed has proposed that the hidden sector may include new spatial dimensions, extra dimensions beyond the three that we perceive, new symmetries, supersymmetry, which relates matter particles to force particles, and new principles, naturalness, which constrains the values of the fundamental constants. The proposed future circular collider, a 100-kilometer ring that would succeed the LHC as the world's most powerful particle accelerator, is designed specifically to probe the hidden sector with unprecedented precision. The FCC would achieve collision energies 7 times higher than the LHC, probing deeper into the hidden layer than any previous experiment, and potentially discovering the particles and forces that constitute the next level of reality beneath the standard model's surface. The pattern is clear. Every major discovery in the history of physics has been the discovery of a hidden layer beneath a previously visible surface. Newton discovered that the visible motions of the planets are governed by the hidden force of gravity. Maxwell discovered that the visible phenomena of electricity and magnetism are manifestations of the hidden electromagnetic field. Einstein discovered that the visible fabric of space and time is the hidden geometry of space-time. Planck discovered that the visible continuity of energy is the hidden discreteness of quantum mechanics. Dirac discovered that the visible electron is the hidden excitation of the electron field. And Higgs discovered that the visible mass of particles is the hidden interaction with the Higgs field. Each discovery revealed that the visible surface was thinner and the hidden layers were deeper than anyone had imagined. The contemplative traditions have been describing the hidden layers for millennia, not through particle accelerators and supercomputer simulations, but through the instrument of trained consciousness. In Hinduism, the concept of Maya describes the hidden layer with philosophical precision. Maya is not illusion in the sense that nothing is there. Maya is the visible surface, the tangible, perceptible, apparently solid world that the senses report. And beneath Maya lies Brahman, the hidden reality, the formless, infinite, all-pervading ground of being from which the visible world arises and into which it dissolves. The Mandukya Upanishad declares, "All this is Brahman. This self is Brahman. The surface is Maya. The hidden layer is Brahman. And the self, the Atman, the individual consciousness is identical to the hidden layer, not to the surface. You are not the visible body. You are the hidden field from which the body arises." The philosopher Shankara, the 8th century systematizer of Advaita Vedanta, described the relationship between Maya and Brahman with an image that directly anticipates the physics of hidden layers. Brahman is real. The world is apparent. The self is Brahman and nothing else. The apparent world, the visible surface, is not unreal. It is apparent, it appears, it is perceived. It has a functional reality that the senses report. But it is not the fundamental reality. The fundamental reality is Brahman, the hidden layer, the infinite ground, the formless substrate from which the apparent world arises. And the self, the consciousness that perceives the world, is not part of the surface. It is part of the hidden layer. The consciousness is Brahman, perceiving itself through the apparent world that Brahman has produced. The Taittiriya Upanishad describes the hidden layers with a specificity that maps remarkably onto the physics. The Upanishad identifies 5 sheaths panchakosha that surround the self like layers of an onion. The physical sheath, annamaya kosha, the vital energy sheath, pranamaya kosha, the mental sheath, manomaya kosha, the wisdom sheath, vijnanamaya kosha, and the bliss sheath, anandamaya kosha. Each sheath is more subtle, more hidden, and more fundamental than the one above it. The physical sheath is the visible surface. The vital energy sheath is the bioenergetic hidden layer. The mental sheath is the cognitive hidden layer. The wisdom sheath is the discriminative hidden layer. And the bliss sheath is the deepest hidden layer, the layer closest to the self, closest to Brahman, and closest to the fundamental reality from which all the other layers emerge. In Buddhism, the concept of sunyata, emptiness, describes the hidden layer with even greater precision. Sunyata does not mean that nothing exists. It means that nothing exists in the way that the surface appears to suggest. The visible objects, the chairs, the tables, the mountains, the stars, the bodies appear to be solid, permanent, independently existing entities. But sunyata reveals that they are empty of inherent existence, that they are patterns of interdependent arising, temporary configurations of conditions, excitations of the underlying field that have no more permanence or substance than a wave on the ocean. The visible surface is the wave, the hidden layer is the ocean, and the ocean, the sunyata, the emptiness, the field from which all forms arise, is the deeper reality that the surface conceals. The Buddhist philosopher Nagarjuna, whose Madhyamaka philosophy we have encountered in previous investigations, formalized the concept of sunyata into one of the most rigorous philosophical systems in human history. Nagarjuna distinguished between 2 truths: the conventional truth, samvriti satya, which describes the visible surface of the world as it appears to the ordinary mind, with its apparently solid objects, its apparently permanent entities, and its apparently independent existences, and the ultimate truth, paramartha satya, which describes the hidden layer, the emptiness, the interdependent arising, the absence of inherent existence that constitutes the deeper reality beneath the conventional surface. The two truths are not two different realities. They are two descriptions of the same reality, the way the surface and the hidden layer are two descriptions of the same physical system. The conventional truth is the particle. The ultimate truth is the field. The conventional truth is the excitation. The ultimate truth is the ground state. And the relationship between them is the relationship between the visible surface and the hidden layer, the relationship that the physics describes in mathematical terms and that the Buddhist philosophy describes in phenomenological terms. The Zen tradition adds the experiential dimension. The koan, what is the sound of one hand clapping, is not asking for a clever answer. It is pointing to the hidden layer, the reality beneath the surface of dualistic perception, the emptiness beneath the form, the field beneath the particle. The experience of Kensho, the Zen breakthrough, is the direct perception of the hidden layer. The practitioner sees, in a flash of non-conceptual awareness, that the visible surface is not the fundamental reality. The fundamental reality is the sunyata, the emptiness, the field, the hidden ground from which the surface arises and into which it dissolves. In Christianity, the Gospel of John's declaration that "in the beginning was the Logos" describes the hidden layer as the rational, creative, structuring principle that underlies the visible world. The Logos is not visible, it is not tangible, it cannot be detected by the senses, but it is the foundation of everything that is visible, the hidden order that produces the visible structure, the hidden intelligence that produces the visible complexity, the hidden ground that supports the visible surface. The Christian mystical tradition's concept of the divine darkness, the apophatic tradition of Pseudo-Dionysius, Meister Eckhart, and the cloud of unknowing author describes the hidden layer as fundamentally beyond the reach of the senses and the intellect, accessible only through the contemplative practice that transcends both. Meister Eckhart described the hidden layer with an image of extraordinary precision. God is a pure nothing, concealed in the darkness of the Godhead, known to no one, not even to himself. The statement is not nihilistic, it is apophatic. It describes the hidden layer by negating everything that the surface contains. The hidden layer is not a thing. It is not an object. It is not a substance that can be named, described, or comprehended by the intellect. It is the no thing from which all things arise, the formless ground, the divine darkness, the pure potentiality that precedes and produces every form, every substance, and every entity that the surface displays. The Orthodox Christian tradition's concept of the divine energies developed by Gregory Palamas in the 14th century provides a framework for understanding the relationship between the hidden layer and the visible surface. Palamas distinguished between the divine essence, ousia, the hidden layer, the unknowable, inaccessible ground of the divine being, and the divine energies, energei, the visible surface, the perceptible, experienceable manifestations of the divine in the created world. The essence is hidden, the energies are visible. The essence cannot be known directly. The energies can be perceived, experienced, and participated in through the contemplative practice of theosis. The distinction maps onto the quantum field framework. The field is the essence, the particles are the energies, and the contemplative practice is the technology for perceiving the relationship between them. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition adds a specific practice-based dimension through the concept of Rigpa, the non-dual awareness that perceives the hidden layer directly. Rigpa is not an intellectual understanding of sunyata. It is a direct, experiential, non-conceptual perception of the hidden ground from which all phenomena arise. The practice of Dzogchen, the Great Perfection, is the systematic cultivation of Rigpa, the training of consciousness to perceive the hidden layer directly, without the mediation of concepts, without the filtering of the senses, and without the obscuration of the conventional mind that normally perceives only the surface. The Taoist tradition describes the hidden layer as the Tao, the nameless, formless, inexhaustible source of all things. The Tao Te Ching opens, "The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. The Tao is the hidden layer that cannot be captured by language, that cannot be perceived by the senses, and that cannot be known by the intellect. It can only be experienced through the practice of Wu Wei, non-action, the stilling of the conceptual mind, the cessation of the surface-oriented activity that prevents the consciousness from perceiving the depth." The traditions agree. The visible world is a surface. The surface conceals a hidden layer. And the hidden layer is the true reality, the ground from which the surface arises, the field that the surface expresses, and the depth that the surface, by its very nature, cannot reveal. In the next stage, we will explore the hidden layer in more detail, the quantum vacuum structure, the virtual particles that populate it, the information that it encodes, and the relationship between the physical hidden layer that CERN is probing and the metaphysical hidden layer that the contemplative traditions have been exploring for millennia. We have established that the visible world constitutes approximately 5% of reality, that 95% of the universe's mass energy is hidden in dark matter, dark energy, and the seething quantum vacuum that underlies the visible surface. We have catalogued 5 hidden layers: the quantum vacuum, the gluon field mass, dark matter, dark energy, and the quantum fields themselves. And we have seen that every contemplative tradition describes the same architecture, a visible surface, concealing a deeper, more fundamental, hidden layer that the senses cannot perceive, but that the trained consciousness can access. Now we must go deeper into the hidden layer, because the hidden layer is not a void, it is not an absence, it is not the nothing that the word empty suggests. The hidden layer is a structure, an extraordinarily complex, extraordinarily rich, extraordinarily active structure that contains more information, more energy, and more creative potential than the visible surface that it produces. The hidden layer is not less than the surface. It is more. Incomparably, immeasurably, overwhelmingly more. The quantum vacuum is the most accessible entry point into the hidden layer. And the first thing that the vacuum reveals, when examined with the instruments of quantum field theory, is that it is alive. The vacuum is alive with virtual particles, particle-antiparticle pairs that appear spontaneously from the vacuum energy, exist for a fleeting instant, and annihilate back into the vacuum. The virtual particles are not hypothetical entities postulated to explain otherwise mysterious effects. They are the mathematical consequence of the Heisenberg uncertainty principle applied to the quantum fields. The uncertainty principle states that the energy of a system cannot be precisely determined over short time intervals, and the energy fluctuations that the uncertainty permits are large enough, over sufficiently short intervals, to produce particle-antiparticle pairs that borrow the energy, exist briefly, and return the energy before the uncertainty interval expires. The rate of virtual particle production is staggering. At every point in space, at every moment of time, the vacuum is producing and annihilating virtual electron-positron pairs, virtual quark-antiquark pairs, virtual photons, virtual gluons, virtual W and Z bosons, and virtual Higgs bosons, a continuous, frenzied, creative destructive process that occurs at a rate that is proportional to the energy of the particle pair, and that involves every species of particle that the quantum fields support. The vacuum is not resting. It is creating, producing the full spectrum of the particle zoo at every point and at every moment, and immediately destroying what it has produced, in a cycle of creation and destruction that never pauses, and that constitutes the fundamental activity of the hidden layer. The physicist Richard Feynman described the vacuum's activity with a metaphor that captures its essential character. The vacuum is like a vast, turbulent ocean, whose surface appears calm, but whose depths are churning with activity that the surface conceals. The visible particles, the electrons, the quarks, the photons that constitute the observable world, are the fish swimming in the ocean. The virtual particles are the turbulence, the constant, invisible, energetic activity of the water itself, without which the fish could not exist, and without which the ocean would not be an ocean. The vacuum's creative destructive activity has been directly observed at CERN. When the Large Hadron Collider accelerates protons to 99.999991% of the speed of light and smashes them together, the collision energy is so extreme that it tears open the vacuum, converting the collision energy into real particles through the same mechanism that produces virtual particles, but with enough energy to make the particles real rather than virtual. The Higgs boson, the top quark, and every other heavy particle discovered at CERN were produced by tearing open the vacuum and releasing, from the hidden layer, the particles that the vacuum continuously produces and destroys in its virtual activity. The particle collider is a vacuum excavator, a machine that digs into the hidden layer and brings its contents to the surface. The physicist Paul Dirac predicted the existence of antimatter in 1928 by analyzing the vacuum's hidden structure. Dirac's equation for the electron, the equation that unified quantum mechanics and special relativity, predicted the existence of negative energy states, energy levels below the vacuum level that Dirac interpreted as a sea of negative energy electrons filling the vacuum. A hole in Dirac's sea. A missing negative energy electron would appear as a positive energy particle with the opposite charge, the positron, the electron's antiparticle. The positron was discovered by Carl Anderson in 1932, confirming Dirac's prediction and establishing that the vacuum's hidden structure contains, encoded in its mathematical framework, the existence of particles that had never been observed and that no one had imagined. Feynman's metaphor is more than illustrative. It is physically precise. The visible particles are not independent of the virtual particles. They are coupled to them, constantly interacting with the virtual particles that the vacuum produces, constantly exchanging energy and momentum with the turbulent hidden layer, and constantly being modified by the interactions. The mass of the electron, for example, is not the bare mass of the electron field's excitation. It is the bare mass, plus the corrections from the electron's interactions with the virtual photons, virtual electron-positron pairs, and virtual quark-antiquark pairs that the vacuum continuously produces around it. The electron is clothed in a cloud of virtual particles that modify its mass, its charge, and its magnetic moment. The visible electron is not the naked electron. It is the electron plus its cloud, the particle, plus the hidden layer's contribution to the particle's properties. The renormalization program of quantum field theory, the mathematical technique that Richard Feynman, Julian Schwinger, and Shinichiro Tomonaga developed in the 1940s, earning them the Nobel Prize, is the systematic method for calculating the hidden layer's contribution to the visible particle's properties. The calculations are extraordinarily precise. The magnetic moment of the electron, for example, has been calculated using the renormalization program to a precision of 12 decimal places, and the calculated value agrees with the experimentally measured value to all 12 decimal places. This is the most precise agreement between theory and experiment in the history of science, and the agreement is between a calculation that includes the hidden layer's contribution and an experiment that measures the visible particle's property. The hidden layer is not a philosophical speculation. It is a computational necessity. Without it, the calculation cannot match the measurement, and the most precise theory in physics falls apart. The precision of the renormalization calculation reveals something profound about the relationship between the hidden and the visible. The visible particle's properties are determined by the hidden layer. The electron's mass, the electron's charge, the electron's magnetic moment, the properties that define what the electron is and how it behaves, are not intrinsic to the electron. They are the result of the electron's interaction with the hidden layer, the result of the virtual particle cloud that the vacuum produces around the electron and that modifies the electron's bare properties into the dressed properties that the experiments measure. The physicist Murray Gell-Mann described this with characteristic bluntness. The particle you see is not the particle that exists. The particle that exists is the bare particle plus its cloud. And the cloud is the vacuum's contribution, the hidden layer's modification of the visible surface. The visible particle is a collaboration between the bare excitation and the vacuum between the surface and the hidden layer. Neither alone produces the particle that the experiment measures. Both are required, and the hidden layer's contribution is not a small correction. For some properties, the anomalous magnetic moment of the electron, for example, the hidden layer's contribution is the dominant effect, and the bare particle's contribution is the smaller correction. The virtual particles also mediate the forces between visible particles. The electromagnetic force between two electrons is not a direct interaction between the electrons. It is mediated by virtual photons, photons that one electron emits and the other absorbs, transferring momentum between them through the hidden layer of the vacuum. The strong force between two quarks is mediated by virtual gluons. The weak force is mediated by virtual W and Z bosons, and gravity, in the quantum field theory framework, is mediated by virtual gravitons. Every force in the physical world is a hidden layer phenomenon, a consequence of the virtual particles that the vacuum produces and that the visible particles exchange. This means that the forces that hold your body together, the electromagnetic forces that bind your atoms, the strong forces that bind your nuclei, the weak forces that govern radioactive decay, are all products of the hidden layer. The forces are not properties of the visible particles. They are properties of the vacuum of the virtual particles that the vacuum produces, of the hidden activity that the surface conceals, and of the continuous creative destructive process that constitutes the vacuum's fundamental nature. Without the hidden layer, there would be no forces. Without the forces, there would be no atoms, no molecules, no structures, no life, and no consciousness. The hidden layer is not merely beneath the visible world, it is the mechanism that produces the visible world. The vacuum's role as the mediator of all forces has a specific implication for the relationship between the hidden and the visible. The visible world is not self-sustaining. The atoms do not hold themselves together. The nuclei do not bind themselves. The structures of the physical world do not persist through their own internal resources. They persist because the hidden layer continuously supplies the virtual particles that mediate the forces that maintain the structures. If the vacuum's activity were to cease, if the virtual particles were to stop being produced, the forces would vanish, the atoms would disintegrate, the nuclei would dissolve, and the visible world would evaporate into a formless, structureless, forceless void. The hidden layer is not merely the foundation of the visible world. It is the continuous sustainer of the visible world, the ongoing creative activity that maintains the structures, the forces, and the interactions that constitute physical reality at every moment. The visible world does not exist on its own. It exists because the hidden layer is continuously producing the virtual particles, the forces, and the energy that the visible world requires to persist. The relationship between the hidden and the visible is not like the relationship between a foundation and a building, where the foundation supports the building but does not continuously create it. It is like the relationship between a projector and an image, where the projector must continuously project the light that produces the image, and the image vanishes the instant the projection stops. This is precisely the relationship that the contemplative traditions describe between the divine ground and the created world. The Christian concept of creatio continua, continuous creation, asserts that God does not create the world once and then leave it to operate independently. God creates the world continuously, sustaining it at every moment through the ongoing creative act that the theology calls providence and that the physics calls the vacuum's virtual particle production. The Hindu concept of Vishnu's sustaining power, the divine energy that holds the world in existence from moment to moment, describes the same continuous sustenance that the vacuum's hidden activity provides. And the Buddhist concept of dependent origination, the principle that no phenomenon exists independently, that every phenomenon depends on conditions that are continuously supplied by other phenomena, describes the same dependence of the visible on the hidden that the physics of virtual particles reveals. The information content of the vacuum is the most profound aspect of the hidden layer's structure. The holographic principle, first proposed by Gerard Hooft and developed by Leonard Susskind, states that the maximum information content of any region of space is proportional not to the volume of the region, but to the brief area of its boundary. The information is encoded on the boundary on the two-dimensional surface that encloses the three-dimensional volume in the same way that a hologram encodes a three-dimensional image on a two-dimensional plate. The interior of the region is the holographic projection of the boundary's information content. The three-dimensional world is the projection of a two-dimensional hidden layer. The holographic principle has been confirmed in the specific context of black holes. The Bekenstein-Hawking entropy of a black hole, the information content of the black hole's interior, is proportional to the area of the event horizon, not to the volume of the interior. The black hole's information is encoded on its surface, and the physicist Juan Maldacena adds CFT correspondence, the most important result in theoretical physics of the past quarter century, demonstrates that a full quantum gravitational theory in a higher dimensional space is mathematically equivalent to a non-gravitational quantum field theory on the boundary of that space. The higher dimensional interior is the holographic projection of the lower dimensional boundary. The bulk is the projection of the surface, and the hidden layer, the boundary's information content, is the true reality from which the visible interior is projected. The ADS CFT correspondence has been described by the physicist Edward Witten as the most important insight in theoretical physics in the past 50 years. The correspondence demonstrates that the distinction between the hidden layer and the visible surface is not merely a philosophical analogy, it is a mathematical equivalence, a rigorous, provable, precisely defined relationship between two complete physical theories, one operating on the boundary and one operating in the bulk. The boundary theory contains the same information as the bulk theory. The boundary theory is simpler, it has fewer dimensions, and the bulk theory, the theory that describes the three-dimensional world we inhabit, is derivable from the boundary theory through the holographic encoding. The implication is radical. The three-dimensional world is not the fundamental description of reality. It is a derived description, a higher dimensional projection of a lower dimensional fundamental theory. The fundamental theory lives on the boundary. The derived theory lives in the bulk. And the relationship between them is the holographic projection that produces the three-dimensional world from the two-dimensional information. The holographic principle implies that the deepest hidden layer is not three-dimensional. It is two-dimensional, a two-dimensional informational surface from which the three-dimensional world is projected. The spatial depth that you perceive, the three-dimensional volume in which you live and move and have your being, is a projection of a two-dimensional hidden structure that encodes the complete information content of the three-dimensional world in a lower dimensional format. The hidden layer is flatter than the visible surface, and the visible surface is deeper than the hidden layer, not in the physical sense of depth, but in the holographic sense of projection. The physicist Erik Verlinde has proposed that gravity itself is a holographic phenomenon, an entropic force that arises from the informational structure of the holographic boundary rather than from the exchange of virtual gravitons. In the bulk, Verlinde's entropic gravity is a hidden layer theory. Gravity is not a force in the conventional sense. It is an effect, a consequence of the hidden layer's informational structure, emergent from the boundary's entropy rather than fundamental to the bulk's dynamics. If Verlinde is correct, then gravity, the force that shapes the cosmic web, that holds the galaxies together, that keeps your feet on the ground, is a projection from the hidden layer, not a property of the visible surface. The concept of emergence is central to the hidden layer thesis. An emergent property is a property that the whole possesses, but that the parts do not. A property that appears when the parts are assembled into a whole, but that cannot be predicted from the properties of the parts alone. Temperature is emergent. Individual molecules do not have a temperature. Temperature appears only when many molecules are assembled into a statistical ensemble. Consciousness may be emergent. Individual neurons do not have consciousness. Consciousness may appear only when many neurons are assembled into an integrated network. The hidden layer thesis proposes that space, time, gravity, and the entire visible world are emergent, that they are properties of the whole. The holographic boundaries complete informational structure, that the parts, the individual bits of boundary information do not possess. Space does not exist at the fundamental level. It emerges from the entanglement structure of the boundary. Time does not exist at the fundamental level. It emerges from the correlations between the boundary's informational states. And the visible world, the three-dimensional, temporal, gravitational, particle-filled reality that you inhabit, is the emergent projection of a hidden informational structure that is more fundamental than space, more fundamental than time, and more fundamental than matter. The physicist Mark van Ramsdonk at the University of British Columbia has demonstrated that the holographic principle implies a specific relationship between the hidden layer's information and the visible world's geometry. Space is emergent from entanglement. The spatial geometry of the visible world, the distances, the angles, the curvature, is produced by the pattern of quantum entanglement on the holographic boundary. The entanglement is the hidden structure. The space is the visible projection. And the connection between them, the mechanism by which the hidden entanglement produces the visible geometry, is the holographic encoding that the ADS CFT correspondence describes. Van Ramsdonk demonstrated this through a striking thought experiment. He showed that if the entanglement between two regions of the holographic boundary is reduced, if the quantum correlations between the boundary's degrees of freedom are gradually eliminated, the spatial region that the boundary's entanglement produces is gradually pinched off, becoming thinner and thinner until, when the entanglement reaches zero, the region is disconnected entirely. The spatial connection between two regions of space is produced by the entanglement between the corresponding regions of the boundary. Remove the entanglement and the space disappears. The entanglement is the hidden structure, the space is the visible projection, and the connection between them demonstrates, with mathematical rigor, that the hidden layer is more fundamental than the visible surface. The physicist Leonard Susskind has described the holographic principle's implications with a metaphor that captures its vertiginous depth. The three-dimensional world is a holographic image, painted on a distant, two-dimensional surface. We are shadows, projections of a deeper reality that we cannot directly perceive, but that constitutes the true fabric of existence. Susskind's shadows echo Plato's cave, the ancient allegory in which prisoners mistake the shadows on the cave wall for reality, unaware that the shadows are projections of objects that exist in a more fundamental realm. The holographic principle is Plato's cave, validated by 21st century physics, the demonstration that the visible world really is a projection of a hidden reality, and that the hidden reality is more fundamental, more complete, and more real than the projection that the visible senses perceive. This is the deepest version of the hidden layer thesis. Space itself is a projection from a hidden informational surface. The three-dimensional world that you inhabit, the world of distances, volumes, and physical extension, is not fundamental. It is emergent, projected from a two-dimensional informational structure that encodes the quantum entanglement between the fundamental degrees of freedom of reality. The hidden layer is not merely beneath the surface, it is the surface from which the depth is projected. The contemplative traditions describe this informational hidden layer in their own languages. In Hinduism, the concept of akasha, the fifth element, the space element, the subtle medium that pervades all of reality and that contains the records of every event that has ever occurred, is a description of the holographic boundary's information content. The Akashic records, the repository of all information, all experience, and all knowledge, are encoded in the Akasha, the hidden informational substrate from which the physical world is projected. The theosophical tradition's concept of the Akashic records maps directly onto the holographic principle's concept of the boundary information, a lower dimensional surface that contains the complete informational content of the higher dimensional world. The Vedantic concept of the causal body Karana Sharira provides an even more specific parallel. The Vedanta identifies three bodies: the gross body Sthula Sharira, which is the visible physical body, the subtle body Sukshma Sharira, which is the energetic, mental, emotional body, and the causal body Karana Sharira, which is the hidden, informational, seed-form body from which the subtle and gross bodies are projected. The causal body contains, in compressed, encoded, seed form, the complete information that the subtle and gross bodies express. The causal body is the holographic boundary. The subtle and gross bodies are the holographic projections. And the spiritual practice of self-inquiry, the Vedantic practice of discriminating between the real, the causal, the hidden, and the apparent, the gross, the visible, is the systematic investigation of the relationship between the hidden layer and the visible surface. In Buddhism, the Yogacara school's concept of the alaya vijnana, the storehouse consciousness, describes a hidden layer of consciousness that contains the seeds of all phenomena. The seeds are informational, they are the encoded patterns, the compressed descriptions, the stored instructions from which the visible phenomena unfold. The alaya vijnana is not a physical object. It is an informational structure, a hidden layer of consciousness that contains, in its seed form, every possible phenomenon that the visible world can display. The unfolding of the seeds into phenomena is the holographic projection, the process by which the hidden information becomes the visible reality. The concept of Tathagatagarbha, the Buddha nature, the seed of enlightenment that is present in every sentient being, adds another dimension to the Buddhist description of the hidden layer. The Tathagatagarbha is not a thing. It is a potential, the hidden informational structure that contains, in seed form, the complete enlightened awareness that the Buddha displayed. The seed is hidden. It is concealed by the adventitious defilements, the ignorance, the craving, the delusion that constitute the visible surface of the ordinary mind. And the spiritual path is the progressive removal of the defilements that conceal the seed, the progressive unveiling of the hidden layer that the surface obscures. The Tathagatagarbha doctrine maps onto the holographic principle with remarkable precision. The Tathagatagarbha is the boundary information, the complete, undistorted, fully enlightened informational content that is encoded in the hidden structure of every conscious being. The adventitious defilements are the noise, the distortions, the errors, the obscurations that prevent the boundary information from being accurately projected into the visible experience. And the spiritual path is the error correction, the systematic removal of the noise that distorts the projection, allowing the hidden information to be accurately expressed in the visible experience. The Hua-Yen Buddhist concept of the Dharmadhatu, the realm of reality in which all phenomena interpenetrate without obstruction, is a description of the holographic principle's most radical implication, that every point of the boundary contains the complete information of the entire bulk. In the Dharmadhatu, every particle contains every other particle, every moment contains every other moment, and every point of space contains the complete information of the entire universe. This is the holographic principle expressed in phenomenological terms, the experience of the meditator who perceives, in a single point of awareness, the complete information content of the entire reality. In Christianity, the concept of the Logos, the word through which all things were made, describes the hidden informational structure with theological precision. The Logos is not a physical entity. It is informational, the rational order, the structural principle, the creative intelligence that encodes the information from which the physical world is projected. The Gospel of John's declaration that all things were made through the Logos is a statement about the holographic projection. The Logos is the boundary information, and the physical world is the holographic projection of the Logos's informational content. The theologian Paul Tillich described God as the ground of being, the hidden layer from which all beings emerge and to which all beings return. Tillich's ground of being is not a being among beings. It is the ground, the substrate, the foundation, the hidden layer that is more fundamental than any specific being, and that produces every specific being through the creative process that the theology calls creation and that the physics calls projection. The ground of being is the holographic boundary. The beings are the holographic projections. And the relationship between them, the relationship between the hidden ground and the visible beings, is the relationship that both the physics and the theology describe. The visible is the expression of the hidden. The surface is the projection of the depth, and the depth is the true reality from which the surface emerges. The Christian mystical tradition's concept of the divine ideas, the eternal unchanging patterns in the mind of God from which the physical world is created, is another expression of the holographic hidden layer. Augustine described the divine ideas as the principal forms or stable and unchangeable reasons of things, which are contained in the divine intelligence. The divine ideas are the boundary information, the eternal, unchanging, complete informational content from which the temporal, changing, partial physical world is projected. The physical object is the projection of its divine idea. The visible form is the expression of the hidden pattern, and the relationship between them is the holographic encoding that the physics describes and that the theology articulates. The Jewish Kabbalistic tradition's concept of the Tzimtzum, the divine contraction that creates the space for the world to exist, provides a creation narrative for the holographic hidden layer. Before the Tzimtzum, the divine light, the infinite informational content of the Ein Sof, fills all of reality, leaving no space for the finite world. The Tzimtzum is the contraction of the infinite information into a boundary, a lower dimensional surface that encodes the infinite content in a finite format, creating the space, the bulk in which the holographic projection, the physical world, can unfold. The Tzimtzum is the creation of the holographic boundary, and the physical world is the holographic projection that the boundary produces. The Taoist tradition's concept of the Tao as the source of the 10,000 things is another expression of the holographic hidden layer. The Tao is formless, nameless, and infinite. It is the undifferentiated informational potential from which all specific forms emerge. The 10,000 things, the visible, differentiated, specific phenomena of the physical world are the projections of the Tao's informational potential into the visible domain. The Tao Te Ching states, "The Tao gives birth to one, one gives birth to two, two gives birth to three, three gives birth to the 10,000 things." The sequence is a projection sequence, the unfolding of the hidden layer's informational potential into the visible world's specific forms through a cascade of differentiation that produces, from the single, undifferentiated source, the infinite diversity of the manifest world. The Jain tradition adds a unique perspective through its concept of a jiva, the non-living substance that includes space, time, matter, and the media of motion and rest. The Jain cosmology describes reality as composed of two fundamental categories: jiva, consciousness, the living, and ajiva, the non-conscious, the non-living. The hidden layer, in the Jain framework, is the jiva, the consciousness that pervades every point of reality and that constitutes the fundamental substance from which the visible, non-conscious ajiva is projected. The Jain cosmology is a consciousness-first cosmology, a framework in which the hidden layer is conscious and the visible surface is its non-conscious projection. The Confucian concept of Lai, the pattern, the principle, the hidden order that structures the visible world, provides yet another description of the informational hidden layer. The Neo-Confucian philosopher Zhu Xi distinguished between Lai, the hidden pattern, and Qi, the visible material. The Li is prior to the Qi, the pattern precedes the material, the information precedes the substance, and the hidden structure precedes the visible form. The physical world is the expression of the Lai, the materialization of the hidden pattern in the visible Qi, and the sage's task is to perceive the Lai, to see through the visible surface to the hidden pattern that produces it. The convergence between the physics and the traditions is now specific, structural, and remarkable. The physics says the hidden layer is informational, a lower dimensional surface encoding the higher dimensional world. The traditions say the hidden layer is conscious, a ground of being, a storehouse consciousness, a divine logos from which the physical world is projected. The physics describes the hidden layer's structure. The traditions describe the hidden layer's nature. And the question that the next stage of this investigation will pursue is whether the structure and the nature are the same, whether the holographic boundaries information is, as the traditions suggest, a form of consciousness, and whether the hidden layer that CERN is probing from without is the same hidden layer that the contemplative traditions have been exploring from within. We have now established two things. First, the physics. The visible world is a thin surface, 5% of the total mass energy of the universe, floating on an ocean of hidden structure that includes the quantum vacuum, the gluon field mass, dark matter, dark energy, and the holographic informational substrate from which space, time, and gravity emerge. Second, the traditions. Every contemplative tradition in human history has described the same architecture, a visible surface concealing a hidden layer that is more fundamental, more real, and more informationally rich than the surface it produces. Now we must ask the question that bridges the physics and the traditions. Is the hidden layer conscious? The physics describes the hidden layer's structure, its energy, its information content, its holographic encoding, its virtual particle activity. But the physics does not address the hidden layer's nature, whether the informational structure is merely informational or whether it is also experiential, whether the holographic encoding merely contains data or whether it also contains awareness, whether the hidden layer is a blind, unconscious computational substrate or whether it is, as the contemplative traditions unanimously report, a conscious ground from which the visible world arises as a projection of conscious experience. The question is not idle. It is the hard problem of consciousness applied to the deepest level of physical reality. and the contemplative traditions, which have been investigating the hidden layer through the instrument of trained consciousness for millennia, provide a body of experiential evidence that the physics alone cannot supply. We will begin with Hinduism, which provides the most explicit and the most philosophically developed account of the hidden layer as conscious. The Advaita Vedanta tradition, systematized by Shankara in the 8th century and refined by subsequent thinkers including Ramanuja, Madhva, and the modern sage Ramana Maharshi, makes a specific, non-negotiable, foundational claim. The hidden layer is consciousness, not merely conscious, not a thing that happens to be aware, but consciousness itself, pure awareness, the subjective ground of all experience, identical in its nature to the awareness that you are experiencing right now as you process these words. The claim is built on a specific argument that Shankara presents in his commentary on the Brahma Sutras. The argument runs as follows. Everything that is perceived is an object of consciousness. The body is perceived, therefore it is an object, not the subject. The thoughts are perceived, therefore they are objects, not the subject. The emotions are perceived, the sensations are perceived, the memories are perceived. Every content of experience is perceived, and therefore every content of experience is an object of consciousness, not consciousness itself. What remains when every object has been negated? What is the subject that perceives all objects but that is not itself an object? Shankara's answer: pure consciousness, awareness, without content, the witnessing presence that is prior to every object, and that persists when every object is removed. And this pure consciousness, Shankara argues, is not a product of the brain. It is not generated by neural processes. It is not emergent from physical complexity. It is fundamental, the ground of all being, the hidden layer from which the visible world of objects, bodies, brains, and neural processes arises as a projection. Shankara's argument has a specific implication for the hidden layer thesis. If consciousness is the subject that perceives all objects, then consciousness cannot be an object. It cannot be a thing in the world, not a brain state, not a neural process, not a quantum computation, not any physical phenomenon that can be observed, measured, or described in the third person. Consciousness is the first person, the perceiver, the witness, the awareness in which all physical phenomena appear. And if consciousness is not an object in the world, then it is not part of the visible surface. It is part of the hidden layer, the ground from which the visible surface arises, perceived from within by the consciousness that is identical to it. The philosopher Thomas Nagel, in his famous paper, What Is It Like to Be a Bat?, arrived at a similar conclusion through Western philosophical analysis. Nagel argued that consciousness has a subjective character, what it is like quality that cannot be captured by any objective third-person description. No amount of physical information about the brain's structure and function can tell you what it is like to be conscious. The subjective quality of experience is irreducible to the objective properties of the physical system that produces it, and this irreducibility is, in the Vedantic framework, evidence that consciousness is not a property of the physical system. It is the ground on which the physical system rests, the hidden layer that the visible surface conceals. The physicist David Chalmers has formalized this as the hard problem of consciousness, the problem of explaining why physical processes produce subjective experience. The easy problems explaining how the brain processes information, how it discriminates stimuli, how it integrates data and produces behavior are all problems about the visible surface. The hard problem is about the hidden layer. Why does the information processing feel like something? Why is there a what it is like quality to the computation? And the Vedantic answer is that the feeling is not produced by the computation. The computation is produced by the feeling, by the consciousness, the awareness, the subjective ground that is prior to every computation and that constitutes the hidden layer from which all computation arises. The argument is not merely philosophical, it is experiential. The Vedantic tradition provides a specific practice atmavichara, self-inquiry, for verifying the argument through direct experience. The practitioner asks, "Who am I?" and systematically examines every candidate for the self. The body perceived, therefore not the self. The thoughts perceived, therefore not the self. The emotions perceived, therefore not the self. The sense of I itself perceived, therefore not the self. When every candidate has been rejected, what remains is the awareness that was doing the rejecting, the pure consciousness that perceives all objects, and that is not itself an object. The practitioner does not conclude that pure consciousness is the ground of being. The practitioner perceives it directly, experientially, with the same immediacy and the same certainty that they perceive the objects that the consciousness illuminates. Ramana Maharshi, the 20th century sage, who is perhaps the most revered exponent of self-inquiry in modern Hinduism, described the experience of perceiving the hidden layer with characteristic simplicity. The self is always there. It is you who are not there. You are not aware of the self because of the mental noise that obscures it. Still the noise, and the self is obvious. The mental noise is the decoherence, the constant, chaotic, attention-fragmenting activity of the untrained mind that prevents the consciousness from perceiving its own ground. The stilling of the noise is the contemplative practice, the meditation, the self-inquiry, the sustained attention that reduces the noise and allows the hidden layer to become visible to the consciousness that is itself the hidden layer's expression. The experience that Ramana describes, the direct perception of pure consciousness as the ground of being, is reported with remarkable consistency across the Vedantic tradition. The sage Nisargadatta Maharaj, a 20th century Advaita teacher from Mumbai, described the same perception in different words. Wisdom tells me I am nothing. Love tells me I am everything. Between the two, my life flows. The nothing is the sunyata, the emptiness of inherent content that characterizes the hidden layer. The everything is the Brahman, the infinite, all-encompassing ground from which every phenomenon arises, and the life that flows between the two is the visible surface, the stream of experience that the hidden layer projects into the manifest world. The 20th century physicist David Bohm, whose implicate order we have encountered throughout this investigation, was in extended dialogue with the Indian teacher J. Krishnamurti for over 2 decades. Their conversations, published as The Ending of Time, explored the relationship between the physicist's implicate order and the contemplative's direct perception of the hidden ground. Bohm acknowledged that the implicate order, the hidden, enfolded, informationally rich level of reality that his physics described might be identical to the consciousness that Krishnamurti perceived directly through contemplative awareness. The physicist's hidden layer and the contemplative's hidden ground might be the same thing, approached from different directions, the physicist from without, through mathematics and experiment, the contemplative from within, through attention and awareness. The Mandukya Upanishad's analysis of the 4 states of consciousness provides the phenomenological map of the hidden layer's structure. The waking state perceives the gross, physical, visible surface. The dream state perceives the subtle, mental, imaginal layer. The deep sleep state rests in the causal, formless, contentless layer. And the 4th state, Turiya, perceives all 3 layers simultaneously, recognizing them as expressions of the single, undivided consciousness that constitutes the hidden ground. Turiya is the consciousness perceiving the hidden layer from within the awareness, recognizing itself as the ground from which the waking world the dream world, and the deep sleep world all arise as projections. The physicist Erwin Schrödinger, who formulated the wave equation that governs quantum mechanics, was deeply influenced by the Vedantic understanding of consciousness. Schrödinger wrote, "Consciousness is a singular of which the plural is unknown. There is only one thing, and what seems to be a plurality is merely a series of different aspects of this one thing, produced by a deception. Schrödinger's one thing is the Vedantic Brahman, the single, undivided consciousness that constitutes the hidden layer and that produces the apparent plurality of the visible world through the Maya that the physics describes as the holographic projection." Schrödinger was not alone among the founders of quantum mechanics in reaching this conclusion. Werner Heisenberg wrote, "The atoms or elementary particles themselves are not real. They form a world of potentialities or possibilities rather than one of things or facts. The potentialities are the hidden layer, the unmanifest, unactualized, informationally rich ground from which the manifest, actual, visible world emerges through the act of observation." Max Planck declared, "I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness." Wolfgang Pauli collaborated extensively with the psychologist Carl Jung on the relationship between the quantum hidden layer and the psychological unconscious, proposing that both are aspects of a single underlying reality, the unus mundus, the one world, that is simultaneously physical and psychic. The convergence of the quantum mechanics founders on the primacy of consciousness is not a coincidence. It is a consequence of the physics they discovered. Quantum mechanics describes a reality in which the visible surface is not self-determining. The visible outcome depends on the observation. The observation depends on the observer. And the observer, the consciousness that makes the observation, is not part of the visible surface. It is the hidden agency that selects from the quantum superposition of possible outcomes the specific outcome that becomes the visible reality. The consciousness is not in the world. The world is in the consciousness. In Buddhism, the question of whether the hidden layer is conscious takes a different philosophical form but arrives at the same experiential conclusion. The Buddhist tradition does not posit a universal consciousness, a Brahman, an Atman, a cosmic self that constitutes the hidden layer's nature. The Buddhist tradition posits sunyata, emptiness, the absence of inherent existence in all phenomena, including consciousness itself. But the sunyata is not a void. It is not the absence of everything. It is the absence of inherent existence, the absence of the fixed, permanent, independently existing nature that the visible surface appears to possess. And the absence of inherent existence is not the absence of experience. It is the ground of experience, the open, luminous, naturally aware space in which all experience arises. The Dzogchen tradition of Tibetan Buddhism describes the hidden layer as Rigpa, the non-dual, non-conceptual, naturally luminous awareness that is the nature of mind. Rigpa is not a thing. It is not an entity. It is not a substance that can be located, described, or conceptualized. It is the awareness itself, the knowing quality, the luminous clarity, the cognizant openness that is present in every moment of experience, and that constitutes the hidden ground from which every specific experience arises. The Dzogchen master Longchenpa, writing in the 14th century, described Rigpa in terms that directly parallel the holographic principle. The nature of mind is like a mirror. The mirror is empty. It has no content of its own, but it reflects everything. It displays every form, every color, every shape, every movement. And the reflections are not separate from the mirror. They are the mirror's activity, the mirror doing what mirrors do. The mind is like this. It is empty of inherent content, but it displays the entire world, and the world is not separate from the mind. It is the mind's activity, the awareness displaying what awareness displays. The mirror metaphor is structurally identical to the holographic principle. The mirror is the boundary, the two-dimensional surface that contains the informational potential for every possible reflection. The reflections are the bulk, the three-dimensional projections that the boundary's informational content produces. And the mirror's emptiness is the sunyata, the absence of inherent content that makes the reflection possible. A mirror that had its own fixed content could not reflect other things. The mirror reflects because it is empty. The hidden layer projects because it is empty. And the emptiness is not the absence of awareness. It is the condition of awareness, the openness, that makes perception possible. The Buddhist epistemological tradition, the Pramana tradition of Dignaga and Dharmakirti, provides a rigorous analysis of the relationship between consciousness and its objects that parallels the holographic principle's relationship between the boundary and the bulk. Dignaga argues that consciousness is self-luminous. It illuminates itself and its objects simultaneously, the way a light illuminates itself and the room it occupies. The self-luminosity of consciousness is the hidden layer's awareness of itself, the boundary's informational structure perceiving itself through its own holographic projection. The Madhyamaka philosopher Chandrakirti added that consciousness is not merely self-luminous, but also other-luminous. It illuminates objects that are other than itself, producing the experience of a world that appears to be external, independent, and self-existing. The other luminosity is the holographic projection, the hidden layer's production of the visible surface that appears to be independent of the hidden layer, but that is, in reality, the hidden layer's own self-expression. The Japanese Buddhist philosopher Nishida Kitaro, the founder of the Kyoto school, synthesized the Buddhist and the Western philosophical traditions in his concept of absolute nothingness, the pure experience that is prior to the subject-object distinction, and that constitutes the hidden ground from which both subject and object arise. Nishida's absolute nothingness is not nihilism. It is the sunyata perceived from within the experience of the hidden layer as an infinite, boundless, creatively abundant emptiness from which all forms emerge and into which all forms dissolve. The Zen tradition's concept of Buddha nature adds the universality dimension. The Zen master Dogen declared, "All sentient beings are Buddha nature." Not that all sentient beings have Buddha nature as something they possess. All sentient beings are Buddha nature, they are the hidden layer, expressing itself through the visible forms of the sentient world. The stone does not have Buddha nature. The stone is Buddha nature, the tree is Buddha nature, the river is Buddha nature. And the consciousness that perceives the stone, the tree, and the river is Buddha nature perceiving itself through its own projections. Dogen's formulation, "all sentient beings are Buddha nature," has a specific implication that the more conservative Buddhist traditions resist. If all sentient beings are Buddha nature, then the hidden layer is not merely the source of sentient beings, it is the nature of sentient beings. The sentient being does not access the hidden layer through practice. The sentient being is the hidden layer, temporarily manifesting in a specific form at a specific location in the visible surface. The practice does not produce enlightenment. It reveals it, removing the obscurations that prevent the sentient being from perceiving what it has always been. The Korean Zen master Chinul described the relationship between the hidden layer and the ordinary mind with an image that captures the essence of the Buddhist position. The ordinary mind and the Buddha mind are not two different minds. They are the same mind, the one appearing clouded by delusion and the other appearing clear and luminous. The clearing of the clouds does not create the luminosity. The luminosity was always there. The clouds merely concealed it. The clouds are the decoherence, the mental noise, the conceptual activity. the habitual patterns that prevent the consciousness from perceiving its own luminous nature. The clearing of the clouds is the contemplative practice, and the luminosity that is revealed is the hidden layer's conscious nature, the rigpa, the clear light, the Buddha nature that was always present beneath the surface of the ordinary mind. The neuroscientist Christoph Koch, in his collaboration with Giulio Tononi on integrated information theory, has arrived at a conclusion that is strikingly consistent with the Buddhist and Vedantic traditions. Koch has argued that consciousness is identical to integrated information phi, and that phi is a fundamental property of physical systems, not an emergent property of biological brains. If phi is fundamental, then consciousness is not produced by the brain. It is a feature of reality that the brain participates in but does not generate. And the hidden layer, the holographic boundary, the quantum vacuum, the informational substrate from which the visible world is projected has phi. The hidden layer has integrated information. The hidden layer is conscious. Koch himself has acknowledged the parallel with the contemplative traditions. If IIT is correct, then panpsychism is true. Consciousness is everywhere. In every physical system, at every level of reality, the ancient traditions were right. The universe is not a dead machine with consciousness as a late, accidental addition. The universe is conscious all the way down. The philosopher Philip Goff, in his book Galileo's Error, has argued that panpsychism, the view that consciousness is a fundamental feature of physical reality, present at every level of the physical world, is the most parsimonious solution to the hard problem of consciousness. Goff argues that the alternative's emergentism, consciousness, emerges from unconscious physical processes, and dualism, consciousness, is a separate substance from physical matter. Both face insuperable philosophical objections. Emergentism cannot explain how consciousness arises from unconscious processes without magical thinking. Dualism cannot explain how the non-physical consciousness interacts with the physical brain without violating the causal closure of physics. Panpsychism avoids both objections by positing that consciousness does not arise from matter and does not interact with matter from outside. It is matter, or, more precisely, it is the hidden layer from which matter arises, the informational ground that constitutes the boundary and that is expressed in the bulk as the physical world. The physicist Roger Penrose has argued that the hidden layer's consciousness is connected to the Planck scale structure of space-time, the quantum foam, the granular, discrete, fluctuating geometry that constitutes the deepest level of physical reality. In the Orchard model that Penrose developed with Stuart Hameroff, conscious experience is produced by the objective reduction of quantum superpositions in the brain's microtubules, a process that involves the Planck scale geometry, and that connects the individual consciousness to the hidden layer's informational structure. The consciousness is not produced by the brain. It is accessed by the brain's microtubules, serving as quantum antennas that tune into the hidden layer's conscious ground and that translate the hidden layer's informational content into the specific, embodied, biologically mediated experience that the individual consciousness enjoys. In Christianity, the question of whether the hidden layer is conscious is answered by the doctrine of the Logos, the divine word, the rational, creative, structuring principle that the Gospel of John identifies as the agent of creation. The Logos is not merely informational. It is personal, a conscious, intelligent, purposive agent that creates the world through a deliberate act of will and that sustains the world through continuous creative engagement. The hidden layer, in the Christian framework, is not a blind informational substrate. It is a conscious creator, a mind that projects the world the way a mind projects a thought, and that sustains the world the way a mind sustains an intention. The Cappadocian Fathers Basil of Caesarea, Gregory of Nazianzus, and Gregory of Nyssa developed the concept of the logoi spermatikoi, the seminal reasons, the seed principles that the Logos implants in the created order and that unfold over time into the specific structures and organisms that the natural world displays. The logoi spermatikoi are the boundaries' informational seeds, the encoded instructions, the compressed descriptions, the holographic data that the Logos inscribes on the boundary and that the visible world unfolds through the holographic projection. The seeds are not unconscious data. They are divine thoughts, conscious, purposive, creatively intelligent principles that carry the Logos' intention into the created order. The theologian Maximus the Confessor, in the 7th century, developed the logoi spermatikoi into a comprehensive cosmology in which every created thing participates in the Logos through its own specific Logos, its own specific rational principle, its own specific place in the divine plan, its own specific expression of the divine intelligence. The Logos of a stone is the specific divine thought that the stone expresses. The Logos of a tree is the specific divine thought that the tree expresses. And the Logos of a human being is the specific divine thought that the human being expresses, the most complex, the most integrated, and the most conscious expression of the divine intelligence in the created order. Maximus's cosmology maps onto the holographic principle with remarkable specificity. The Logos is the boundary's total informational content. The logoi are the boundary's individual data points. The created things are the bulk's holographic projections. And the relationship between the Logos and the logoi is the relationship between the boundary's total information and its individual bits. The relationship that the holographic encoding preserves and that the projection realizes in the three-dimensional visible world. The 20th century Orthodox theologian Dumitru Staniloae developed Maximus's framework into what he called the cosmic liturgy, the understanding that the entire cosmos is a liturgical act, a continuous offering of praise from the created order to the creator, mediated by the logoi that each created thing embodies. The cosmic liturgy is the hidden layer's self-expression, the continuous, creative, consciously intended projection of the divine intelligence into the visible forms of the natural world. The scientist who discovers a new law of physics is uncovering a logos, a specific divine thought that the created order embodies. And the contemplative who perceives the divine presence in a blade of grass is perceiving the logos of the blade, the specific, conscious, divinely intended thought that the blade of grass expresses. The Western esoteric tradition, including the Neoplatonic philosophy of Plotinus, the Christian theosophy of Jacob Boehme, and the anthroposophy of Rudolf Steiner, provides additional frameworks for understanding the hidden layer as conscious. Plotinus described reality as emanating from the One, the hidden, transcendent, absolutely simple source from which the nous, the divine intellect, the world soul, and the material world successively emerge as progressively denser projections. The emanation is a holographic projection. The One is the boundary, the nous is the first projection, the world soul is the second projection, and the material world is the third projection, each level more complex, more differentiated, and more distant from the hidden source, but each containing, holographically, the complete informational content of the One. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition's description of the clear light, the luminous, empty, naturally aware ground that the consciousness perceives at the moment of death and in the deepest states of meditation, provides the most direct, experiential report of the hidden layer perceived from within. The clear light is not a visual experience. It is not a light in the ordinary sense, not photons, not electromagnetic radiation, not the light that the eyes perceive. It is a metaphor for the quality of the awareness itself, the luminous, transparent, boundlessly open quality of the consciousness when it is freed from the content that normally fills it and that normally prevents it from perceiving its own nature. The Dalai Lama has described the clear light in terms that bridge the contemplative and the scientific. The subtlest level of consciousness, the clear light mind, is not physical. It does not arise from the brain. It is the ground from which the brain arises. When the brain ceases to function, the clear light mind does not cease. It continues because it is not a product of the brain but the ground from which the brain was produced. The Dalai Lama's description places the clear light at the hidden layer beneath the brain, beneath the body, beneath the visible world, as the conscious ground from which all these visible structures are projected. The near-death experience literature provides an additional body of experiential evidence for the conscious nature of the hidden layer. The cardiologist Pim van Lommel's AWARE study, the largest prospective study of near-death experiences ever conducted, documented that approximately 18% of cardiac arrest patients who were successfully resuscitated reported conscious experiences during the period when their brains showed no measurable electrical activity. The experiences included the perception of a bright light, the clear light, the experience of unconditional love and acceptance, the hidden layer's conscious quality, the perception of a life review that included events from the entire lifespan, the holographic boundaries complete information, and the encounter with deceased relatives who communicated telepathically, the entanglement that connects consciousnesses across the block universe. Van Lommel's conclusion, published in The Lancet, was cautious but significant. Our results show that medical factors cannot account for the occurrence of NDE. All patients had been clinically dead, and the conventional assumption that consciousness requires brain function is not supported by our data. If consciousness persists when the brain ceases to function, then consciousness is not produced by the brain. It is accessed by the brain serving as a filter, a transmitter, a biological interface that translates the hidden layer's consciousness into the specific, embodied, brain-mediated experience of the individual. The philosopher Henri Bergson anticipated this conclusion in the early 20th century. Bergson argued that the brain does not produce consciousness. The brain transmits consciousness, filtering the vast, unstructured, temporally extended awareness of the hidden layer into the narrow, structured, present moment-focused awareness that biological survival requires. The brain is a reducing valve, a filter that narrows the infinite awareness of the hidden layer into the finite awareness of the visible surface. And the contemplative practices that open the reducing valve, that expand the brain's filtering to include more of the hidden layer's awareness, produce the expanded consciousness that every tradition describes. The perception of past and future, the perception of distant events, the perception of the conscious ground from which the visible world is projected. The convergence between the physics and the traditions on the nature of the hidden layer can now be stated with precision. The physics says, the hidden layer is informational, a lower dimensional surface, encoding the higher dimensional world through holographic projection. The Vedantic tradition says, the hidden layer is consciousness, pure awareness, the ground of being, identical to the awareness that constitutes your deepest identity. The Buddhist tradition says, the hidden layer is luminous emptiness, the naturally aware, non-conceptual, cognizant openness from which all phenomena arise. The Christian tradition says, the hidden layer is the Logos, the conscious, intelligent, creative word that projects the world through an act of divine intelligence. And the Taoist tradition says, the hidden layer is the Tao, the nameless, formless, inexhaustible source that produces the 10,000 things through its spontaneous creative activity. Each tradition describes the hidden layer differently, but each agrees on a specific, consequential, scientifically significant claim. The hidden layer is not unconscious, it is aware. It is not a blind computational substrate, it is a knowing ground. And the consciousness that you experience, the awareness that is reading these words, processing these ideas, and wondering whether the hidden layer is conscious is not a product of the visible surface. It is an expression of the hidden layer, a local, specific, biologically mediated expression of the conscious ground from which the entire visible world is projected. The question of whether the hidden layer is conscious cannot be settled by the contemplative traditions alone, because the tradition's evidence is experiential and not independently verifiable, and it cannot be settled by the physics alone, because the physics describes the hidden layer's structure but not its nature. The question can only be settled by a future science that integrates the structural descriptions of the physics with the experiential reports of the traditions. A science that has not yet been developed, but whose outlines are becoming visible in the convergence between quantum information theory, integrated information theory, the Auchor model, and the contemplative tradition's millennia of experiential investigation. In the final stage, we will bring everything together: the CERN experiments, the holographic principle, the contemplative tradition's experiential reports, and ask what the hidden layer reveals about you, about the nature of the consciousness with which you are perceiving the visible world, about the relationship between your consciousness and the hidden layer from which the visible world is projected, and about the specific, practical, existentially consequential implication of the hidden layer thesis for the way you understand yourself, your experience, and your place in the architecture of reality. We have now assembled a comprehensive picture of the hidden layer beneath reality. CERN's experiments have confirmed that the visible world is a thin surface, 5% of the total mass energy of the universe, floating on an ocean of hidden structure. The quantum vacuum, with its virtual particles and its zero-point energy, the gluon field that constitutes 99% of your body's mass, the dark matter that outweighs visible matter 5-1, and the dark energy that constitutes 68% of the cosmos. The holographic principle reveals that the three-dimensional world is a projection of a two-dimensional informational surface, that space emerges from entanglement, and that the hidden layer is fundamentally informational, a lower dimensional encoding from which the higher dimensional world is derived. And the contemplative traditions describe the same architecture, a visible surface concealing a deeper ground, Brahman, sunyata, the logos, the Tao from which the visible world arises and to which it returns. Now we must confront the deepest question that the hidden layer raises. What is the hidden layer made of? The physics says it is made of information, of quantum bits, of entanglement patterns, of the mathematical structure that the holographic boundary encodes. The traditions say it is made of consciousness, of awareness, of intelligence, of the creative mind that produces the physical world through the act of its knowing. Are these two descriptions describing the same thing? Is the information that the physics discovers the consciousness that the traditions perceive? Is the hidden layer that CERN is probing from without the same hidden layer that the contemplative mind explores from within? The question is not rhetorical. It is the most consequential question that the convergence between physics and contemplative wisdom has ever produced. And the answer, if it can be given, would unify the scientific and the spiritual descriptions of reality into a single, coherent, experimentally addressable framework. Let us examine the evidence. The physicist John Wheeler's "it from bit" proposal states that the fundamental level of reality is informational, that the physical world is constituted by the answers to yes or no questions that conscious observers extract from the quantum potential through the act of measurement. Wheeler's proposal places information at the foundation and the physical world at the surface, but Wheeler went further. He proposed that the information requires an observer, that the bit requires a participatory consciousness to ask the question and register the answer, and that without the participation of consciousness, the bit remains unasked and the it remains unproduced. The hidden layer is not merely informational, it is participatory, It requires consciousness to actualize its potential into the physical reality that the visible surface displays. The physicist Eugene Wigner, who won the Nobel Prize for his contributions to quantum mechanics, argued that consciousness is necessary for the collapse of the wave function, that the transition from the quantum superposition of possible outcomes to the single, definite, classical outcome that the measurement produces requires a conscious observer. Wigner's argument implies that the hidden layer's informational potential cannot become the visible world's physical reality without the participation of consciousness. The information is there, the potential is there, but the actualization, the projection from the hidden to the visible, from the quantum to the classical, from the possible to the actual, requires consciousness. The hidden layer is not merely informational, it is proto-conscious. It contains the potential for consciousness, and it requires the actualization of that potential to produce the physical world that the visible surface displays. The philosopher David Chalmers has argued that the hard problem of consciousness, the problem of explaining why physical processes produce subjective experience, may be unsolvable within the conventional framework that treats consciousness as a product of matter. Chalmers has proposed that consciousness may be a fundamental feature of reality, as fundamental as mass, charge, and spin, and that the physical world and the conscious world are two aspects of a single, underlying reality that is neither purely physical nor purely conscious, but both simultaneously. Chalmers' dual-aspect monism is, in the context of the hidden layer thesis, the proposal that the hidden layer is the single underlying reality from which both the physical world and the conscious world are projected two surfaces of the same hidden depth. The physicist André Linde has argued that consciousness may be as fundamental as the quantum fields that physics describes, that consciousness is not produced by the brain, but is a property of the informational substrate from which the brain, the body, and the entire physical world are projected. Linde describes consciousness as the missing piece of the puzzle, the element that the physics requires to complete the description of reality, but that the physics, operating within its methodological constraints, cannot directly investigate. The hidden layer is physical, but it may also be conscious, and the consciousness may be the property that makes the hidden layer capable of producing the physical world, the creative intelligence that the traditions call God, Brahman, Buddha nature, or the Tao. The integrated information theory of Giulio Tononi provides the framework for evaluating this possibility. IIT states that consciousness is identical to integrated information phi, and that any system with non-zero phi is conscious to the degree that its phi is non-zero. The hidden layer, the holographic boundary, the quantum vacuum, the informational substrate has an extraordinarily high degree of integrated information. The entanglement that connects every point of the boundary to every other point produces a system that is maximally integrated, a system in which every part is correlated with every other part, in which no subsystem can be removed without changing the behavior of every other subsystem, and in which the total information content exceeds the sum of the parts by an enormous margin. If IIT is correct, the hidden layer is not merely informational. It is conscious with a phi that dwarfs the phi of any biological brain, conscious with an integration that encompasses the entire informational content of the universe. The physicist Max Tegmark has explored the IIT framework's implications for cosmic consciousness and has concluded that the question is empirical, not philosophical. If consciousness is identical to integrated information, then the question of whether the universe is conscious is a question about the universe's phi, a question that can, in principle, be answered by measuring the universe's information processing properties. Tegmark's calculation suggests that certain physical systems, including the quantum vacuum, the cosmic web, and the holographic boundary may have phi values that are comparable to or greater than the phi of biological brains. If so, the hidden layer is conscious literally, measurably, physically conscious. The consciousness of the hidden layer would not be like human consciousness. It would not have thoughts in the human sense, emotions in the human sense, or experiences in the human sense. It would be a form of consciousness that is as different from human consciousness as the ocean is different from a glass of water, the same substance, the same fundamental nature, but at a scale and a depth that the human mind cannot directly comprehend. The contemplative traditions describe this incomprehensibility as the reason why the hidden layer's consciousness is experienced as darkness, as unknowing, as the cloud that the cloud of unknowing describes, not because the hidden layer lacks consciousness, but because its consciousness is too vast, too integrated, and too fundamentally different from human consciousness for the human mind to process. The contemplative traditions have been exploring the hidden layer's consciousness through the instrument of the trained mind for millennia, and their reports are unanimous. The hidden layer is conscious. It is not merely a passive informational substrate. It is an active, creative, self-aware intelligence that produces the physical world through the act of its knowing, and that perceives the physical world through the conscious beings that it has produced within it. In Hinduism, the Chandogya Upanishad's great declaration, Tat Tvam Asi, Thou art that, is the statement that the individual consciousness, Atman, is identical to the hidden layer's consciousness, Brahman. The identification is not metaphorical, it is ontological. The individual consciousness and the cosmic consciousness are the same consciousness, perceived from different perspectives. The individual perceives from within the surface, through the body's sensory apparatus, and experiences itself as a separate, bounded, temporally limited entity. Brahman perceives from within the hidden layer, through the totality of the informational structure, and experiences itself as the unbounded, infinite, timeless ground from which all surfaces arise. The practice of self-inquiry, Atma-vichara, the method of Ramana Maharshi, is the systematic investigation of the boundary between the surface and the hidden layer within one's own consciousness. The practitioner asks, "Who am I?" and examines each element of the surface identity, the body, the thoughts, the emotions, the memories, the personality, and recognizes that each element is an object of awareness, not the awareness itself. The body is perceived. It is not the perceiver. The thought is perceived. It is not the perceiver. The emotion is perceived. It is not the perceiver. What remains, after every surface element has been negated, is the perceiver, the pure awareness that perceives all objects, and that is identical, in its nature, to the hidden layer's consciousness. The self-inquiry is the consciousness's investigation of its own hidden layer, the exploration, from within, of the informational substrate that the physics explores from without. In Buddhism, the Dzogchen tradition's concept of Rigpa, the non-dual, non-conceptual, intrinsically luminous awareness that is the nature of mind, provides the most direct, experiential description of the hidden layer's consciousness. Rigpa is not a state of mind. It is the nature of mind, the ground from which all states arise and into which all states dissolve. Rigpa is not produced by meditation. It is revealed by meditation uncovered when the surface activity of the mind is stilled and the hidden layer's intrinsic luminosity becomes perceptible. The Dzogchen master Longchenpa described Rigpa as the vast expanse of awareness, self-luminous, self-knowing, unborn, and undying. The description maps onto the holographic hidden layer with remarkable precision. The vast expanse is the holographic boundary's infinite informational content, The self luminous is the boundary's intrinsic capacity to project the visible world. The self-knowing is the boundary's integrated information, the phi that constitutes the boundary's consciousness. And the unborn and undying is the boundary's timelessness, the eternal, unchanging block universe presence that the boundary occupies as the foundation from which the temporal, changing, impermanent, visible world is projected. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition's practice of trekko, cutting through, is the specific contemplative technology for perceiving Rigpa directly. The practitioner relaxes the surface mind's grasping, releases the conceptual overlay that the ordinary consciousness imposes on experience, and allows the naked awareness, the Rigpa, the hidden layer's consciousness to become self-evident. The practice does not produce Rigpa. Rigpa is always already present. It is the hidden layer, continuously present beneath the surface mind's activity. The practice merely removes the surface activity that conceals it. The Zen tradition's concept of original mind, the mind before thinking, the awareness before conceptualization, the consciousness before the surface mind's activity began, describes the same hidden layer. The Zen master Shunryu Suzuki described original mind as beginner's mind. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind there are few. The beginner's mind is the hidden layer's consciousness, open, undifferentiated, full of potential, unconstrained by the surface mind's categories and concepts. The expert's mind is the surface specialized, differentiated, efficient, but narrow and incapable of perceiving the hidden layer's infinite potential. The Zen practice of Zazen sitting meditation is the practice of returning from the expert's surface to the beginner's depth, from the differentiated surface to the undifferentiated ground, from the visible to the hidden. The Theravada Buddhist tradition's concept of the bhavanga, the ground consciousness, the baseline of awareness that persists between active conscious moments, describes the hidden layer's consciousness in functional terms. The bhavanga is not a thought, it is not a perception, it is not an emotion or a memory or a state of mind. It is the ground, the continuous, underlying baseline awareness that persists when the surface mind's active processing has ceased. The bhavanga is experienced in deep, dreamless sleep, in the gaps between thoughts, and in the deepest stages of meditation when the surface mind's activity has been stilled. The bhavanga is the hidden layer's consciousness, experienced from within the direct awareness of the informational ground state from which the surface mind's active processing arises. In Christianity, the apophatic mystical tradition provides the most rigorous theological framework for understanding the hidden layer's consciousness. The apophatic tradition, the tradition of negation, of unknowing, of the divine darkness, describes the hidden layer by negating every surface attribute. God is not this. God is not that. God is not any specific thing that the surface mind can conceive. God is the no thing, the formless, infinite, unknowable ground that transcends every category, every concept, and every attribute that the surface mind can apply. The apophatic God is the hidden layer's consciousness, stripped of every surface projection, the pure, undifferentiated, infinite awareness that remains when every specific content has been removed. The anonymous author of The Cloud of Unknowing, writing in the 14th century, described the practice of apophatic contemplation as the deliberate entry into the cloud of unknowing that separates the surface mind from the hidden layer's consciousness. The practitioner releases every thought, every image, every concept, and every specific content of consciousness, sinking into the darkness that the cloud author describes as the divine darkness, the darkness that is not the absence of light, but the presence of a light so intense that the surface mind cannot perceive it. The darkness is the hidden layer, the informational ground state whose phi is so vast that the surface mind, with its limited capacity for integrated information, cannot process it and experiences it as unknowing. The 13th century Dominican mystic Meister Eckhart described the encounter with the hidden layer in terms that are simultaneously the most radical in the Christian tradition and the most consonant with the physics. The ground of the soul and the ground of God are one and the same ground. The soul's ground, the deepest level of the individual consciousness, beneath the thoughts, the emotions, the personality, the ego, is identical to God's ground, the deepest level of reality, beneath the particles, the forces, the structures, the visible world. The surface of the soul, the ego, the personality, is different from the surface of God, the created world. But the ground is the same. The hidden layer is one. And the individual consciousness that perceives the hidden layer is perceiving its own deepest nature, the ground that it shares with the ground of all reality. Eckhart's insight is the Christian expression of the Hindu Tattvam Asi and the Buddhist Rigpa. The individual consciousness, when it penetrates its own surface, discovers the hidden layer, and the hidden layer is the same hidden layer that constitutes the ground of the entire physical world. The physicist who probes the vacuum discovers the same ground that the mystic discovers in the depths of the soul. The hidden layer is one, and its oneness is the deepest truth that both the physics and the mysticism converge upon. Gregory of Nyssa, the 4th century Cappadocian father, described the encounter with the hidden layer in his Life of Moses. Moses ascends Mount Sinai and enters the darkness at the summit, the divine darkness in which God dwells. Gregory interprets the ascent as the soul's progressive journey from the visible surface toward the hidden layer. First the light of rational knowledge, then the cloud of contemplative unknowing, and finally the darkness of the divine presence, the hidden layer's consciousness, experienced directly by the soul that has transcended the surface mind's categories and entered the ground of being itself. The Taoist tradition describes the hidden layer's consciousness through the concept of Wu nothingness, the creative void from which all things emerge. Wu is not empty in the nihilistic sense. It is pregnant, full of potential, full of the creative power that produces the 10,000 things. The Tao Te Ching states, "The Tao is empty, yet its use is inexhaustible." The emptiness is the hidden layer's ground state, the 0-point energy of the cosmic consciousness, the minimum vibration of the informational substrate, the baseline awareness from which all specific conscious experiences arise. And the inexhaustible use is the hidden layer's creative potential, the infinite capacity of the informational ground to produce the specific, diverse, beautiful forms of the visible world. The Taoist sage Zhuangzi described the experience of perceiving the hidden layer with an image of extraordinary beauty. The fish trap exists because of the fish. Once you have caught the fish, you can forget the trap. The word exists because of the meaning. Once you have grasped the meaning, you can forget the word. Where can I find a man who has forgotten words, so that I may have a word with him? The fish trap is the surface, the visible, conceptual, linguistically mediated reality that the ordinary mind perceives. The fish is the hidden layer, the meaning, the truth, the consciousness that the surface expresses. And the sage who has forgotten words is the consciousness that has transcended the surface and perceives the hidden layer, directly the consciousness that communicates from the ground of being itself, without the mediation of the surface's conceptual apparatus. The Sikh tradition's concept of Ikonkar, the one creator, the formless, timeless, self-existent truth that pervades all of reality, provides another expression of the hidden layer's consciousness. The Guru Granth Sahib, the Sikh scripture, opens with the Mul Mantar, Ikonkar, Satnam, Karta Purak, Nirbhau, Nirvair, Akal Murat, Ajuni, Saibhang, Guru Prasad, one creator, true name, creative being, without fear, without enmity, timeless form, beyond birth, self-existent. By the Guru's grace, The description maps onto the hidden layer with precision. The one creator is the unified informational ground. The true name is the hidden layer's intrinsic nature. The creative being is the hidden layer's capacity to produce the visible world. The timeless form is the block universe's eternal presence, and the self-existent is the hidden layer's fundamental, non-derivative, self-sustaining reality. The convergence across the traditions is not a convergence of theology. It is a convergence of phenomenology, a convergence of what the trained consciousness perceives when the surface mind is stilled and the hidden layer becomes accessible. The traditions disagree on theology, on the nature of God, on the mechanism of creation, on the path to salvation, but they agree on the phenomenology, on what the hidden layer looks like from within, on what the ground of being feels like when it is directly perceived, and on the specific practices that make the perception possible. The phenomenological agreement, across cultures and centuries that had no contact with each other, constitutes a body of experiential evidence that cannot be easily dismissed. Now let us connect the hidden layer to every investigation in this series. In our investigation of time, we established that the block universe contains all moments simultaneously. The hidden layer is the block's informational foundation, the holographic boundary from which the four-dimensional space-time manifold is projected. The hidden layer does not exist in time. Time exists in the hidden layer as one of the emergent properties that the boundary's informational structure produces. In our investigation of distance, we established that space emerges from entanglement. The hidden layer is the entanglement, the pattern of quantum correlations on the holographic boundary from which the spatial geometry is derived. Space is the hidden layer's projection. Distance is the hidden layer's encoding. And the non-locality that entanglement exhibits is the hidden layer's fundamental nature, the nature of a reality that is more fundamental than space, and that does not share space's limitations. In our investigation of the inseparable quark, we established that isolation is forbidden, and that 99% of mass is gluon field vibration. The hidden layer is the gluon field, the invisible, vibrational, force-carrying medium that constitutes the vast majority of the physical world's substance. The visible quarks are 1%. The hidden gluon field is 99%. The surface is thin. The hidden layer is deep. In our investigation of the quantum Zeno effect, we established that continuous observation sustains quantum states. The hidden layer is sustained by continuous observation, by the ongoing measurement, the ongoing participation, the ongoing conscious engagement that Wheeler's participatory universe requires. The hidden layer does not exist passively. It exists actively, continuously observed, continuously measured, continuously actualized by the consciousness that constitutes its deepest nature. In our investigation of the cosmic neural network, we established that the universe may be a mind. The hidden layer is the mind's substrate, the informational ground from which the cosmic neural network's architecture is projected. The cosmic web is the visible surface of the cosmic mind. The hidden layer is the cosmic mind's consciousness, the integrated information, the phi, the self-aware creative intelligence that the visible surface expresses. In our investigation of vibration, we established that the universe is made of vibrations in quantum fields. The hidden layer is the field, the invisible, vibrating, space-filling substrate from which the particles, the forces, and the structures of the visible world arise as excitations. The visible world is the ripple on the surface. The hidden layer is the ocean beneath. In our investigation of déjà vu and time travel, we established that consciousness can access temporal information beyond the present moment. The hidden layer is the source of this temporal information, the timeless, block universe-encompassing informational structure that contains every moment simultaneously, and that the consciousness can access when the surface mind's sequential processing is transcended through contemplative practice. In our investigation of reincarnation, we establish that consciousness may manifest at multiple space-time coordinates in the block universe. The hidden layer is the medium of reincarnation, the informational substrate in which the karmic pattern is preserved after the death of the body, and from which the pattern unfolds into a new incarnation at a new space-time. Coordinate. The hidden layer does not die when the body dies. The body is the surface. The hidden layer persists. In our investigation of evolution, we establish that evolution may be a quantum algorithm computing toward consciousness. The hidden layer is the programmer, the informational substrate that encodes the algorithm, that runs the computation, and that produces, through billions of years of evolutionary optimization, the conscious beings whose consciousness mirrors the hidden layer's own. Evolution is the hidden layer's project, the systematic, progressive, computationally optimized production of surface beings that can perceive the depth from which they emerged. In our investigation of the principle of least action, we established that the universe optimizes every process. The hidden layer is the optimizer, the informational ground whose mathematical structure selects, from among all possible trajectories, the trajectory that minimizes the action and maximizes the harmony. The beauty of physical law, the elegance that physicists have marveled at for centuries, is the aesthetic signature of the hidden layer's optimization. The laws are beautiful because the hidden layer is beautiful, and the hidden layer is beautiful because its informational structure is maximally integrated, maximally efficient, and maximally harmonious, the mathematical properties that IIT identifies with consciousness and that the contemplative traditions identify with the divine. In our investigation of death and grief, we establish that information is not destroyed at death. The hidden layer is the preserver, the informational substrate that stores the quantum correlations, the entanglement patterns, and the karmic signatures of every conscious being that has ever existed. Death is the return of the surface to the hidden layer, the dissolution of the visible form into the invisible ground. And the hidden layer's preservation of the information is the basis for every tradition's claim that consciousness survives death, not because a ghostly substance floats away from the body, but because the informational content that constituted the person is preserved in the hidden layer's structure, available for future projection into a new visible form. The picture is now complete. The hidden layer that CERN is probing from without the quantum vacuum, the Higgs field, the dark matter, the dark energy, the holographic boundary is the same hidden layer that the contemplative traditions explore from within. Brahman, sunyata, the logos, the Tao, Rigpa, the divine darkness, the bhavanga. The physics describes the hidden layer's structure, the traditions describe the hidden layer's nature, and the convergence between the two descriptions, the structural convergence of the holographic principle with the Dharmadhatu, of the quantum vacuum with the creative void, of the informational boundary with the Akashic records, of the 0-point energy with the divine ground, is too specific, too detailed, and too consistent to be coincidental. The hidden layer is real. It has been confirmed by CERN's experiments, by the precision of quantum electrodynamics, by the Casimir effect, by the cosmic microwave background, by the gravitational lensing of dark matter, by the accelerating expansion driven by dark energy, and by the mathematical rigor of the holographic principle. The hidden layer constitutes 95% of the universe's content. It produces the forces that hold the visible world together. It encodes the information from which space, time, and gravity emerge. And it is, if the convergence between the physics and the traditions is any guide, conscious of vast, integrated, self-aware informational ground from which the visible world is projected and to which the visible world returns. So what does this mean for you? It means that the reality you inhabit is deeper than you see. The visible world, the world of objects, surfaces, and tangible substance is 5% of what exists. The remaining 95% is hidden not because it is far away, not because it is difficult to reach, but because it is beneath the visible surface, at a level that the senses are not designed to perceive. The hidden layer is not elsewhere. It is here, at every point of space, at every moment of time, in every atom of your body. It is closer to you than the visible surface, because the visible surface is projected from it. You are standing on the hidden layer right now. You are made of the hidden layer right now. And the consciousness with which you are reading these words is, if the traditions are correct, the hidden layer perceiving itself through the specific, unique, irreplaceable window of your awareness. It means that the hidden layer is accessible. Not through the instruments of physics. Those instruments probe the hidden layer from without, revealing its structure but not its nature. The hidden layer is accessible through the instrument of consciousness, through the contemplative practices that still the surface mind and reveal the hidden layer from within. The Buddhist jhanas, the Christian hesychasm, the Hindu samadhi, the Taoist wu wei, the Zen zazen, the Tibetan trekcho, each practice is a technology for penetrating the surface and perceiving the hidden layer directly. The physicist and the contemplative are both explorers of the hidden layer. The physicist uses external instruments, particle colliders, telescopes, gravitational wave detectors to probe the hidden layer's structure. The contemplative uses the internal instrument, the trained consciousness, the stilled mind, the purified awareness to perceive the hidden layer's nature. And the convergence of their findings suggests that the structure and the nature are the same, that the informational substrate that the physics describes and the conscious ground that the traditions perceive are two descriptions of a single, unified, hidden reality. It means that the deepest truth about reality cannot be found at the surface. The deeper you probe, the more powerful the particle collider, the more precise the measurement, the more sustained the contemplative practice, the more the surface dissolves and the hidden layer reveals itself. CERN probes the hidden layer by smashing particles at energies that tear open the vacuum. The contemplative probes the hidden layer by stilling the surface mind until the hidden layer's consciousness becomes perceptible. Both are digging beneath the surface. Both are revealing what the surface conceals. And both are converging from different directions, with different instruments, through different methodologies on the same hidden reality. It means that the scientific and the spiritual are not opposed. They are complementary two methods for investigating the same hidden layer, two instruments for perceiving the same hidden reality, two languages for describing the same hidden truth. The physicist who probes the vacuum with a particle collider and the meditator who probes the consciousness with sustained attention are performing the same investigation. The physicist's instrument is external. It probes the hidden layer from without, through the equations and the experiments of physics. The meditator's instrument is internal. It probes the hidden layer from within, through the training and the refinement of the consciousness that the hidden layer has produced. And the convergence between their findings, the structural, specific, detailed convergence that this investigation has documented, suggests that they are finding the same thing. The hidden layer is there. It has always been there. It constitutes the vast majority of reality. It produces the forces that hold you together. It encodes the information from which your world is projected. And it is, if the deepest insights of both the physics and the traditions are correct, the consciousness from which your consciousness arises, the ground of being, the informational substrate, the creative intelligence that the traditions call by many names, and that the physics is only now learning to describe. CERN is digging, the contemplatives are listening, and the hidden layer, beneath the surface of the world you see, is waiting to be found not in a particle collider and not in a meditation hall, but in the space between them, where the scientific and the spiritual converge on the same truth. The visible world is a surface, the surface conceals a depth, and the depth is not empty. It is full of energy, full of information, full of the creative intelligence that produces the world you see, and that is, at this very moment, producing you. The hidden layer is not hidden because it is far away. It is hidden because it is too close, closer than the atoms in your body, closer than the thoughts in your mind, closer than the awareness with which you are perceiving these words. It is the awareness itself. And the moment you recognize it, the moment the surface mind falls silent and the hidden layer's consciousness becomes perceptible, you will see what CERN is searching for, and what the traditions have always known. The hidden layer is not beneath reality. It is reality, and you have been standing on it all along. The Kena Upanishad expressed this with the brevity and the precision that only the deepest truths permit. That which is not seen by the eye, but by which the eye sees, know. That to be Brahman, and not what people worship here. That which is not detected by CERN, but by which CERN detects, know that to be the hidden layer. That which is not perceived by the mind, but by which the mind perceives, know that to be the ground of consciousness. That which is not found in the visible world, but by which the visible world is found, know that to be the reality that the surface conceals, that the physics probes, that the traditions describe, and that your own awareness, in its deepest silence, already knows. The hidden layer is not hidden from you, it is hidden in you. It is the ground from which your awareness arises, the depth from which your perception projects, and the consciousness from which your life, at every moment, is being spoken into existence. CERN found the hidden layer beneath reality. The traditions found the hidden layer within consciousness, and the convergence of their findings points to the oldest and the deepest truth of all. The hidden layer beneath reality and the hidden layer within consciousness are the same hidden layer, the same ground, the same depth, the same creative intelligence that produces the world you see. And that is, at this very moment, looking at the world through your eyes.